I'm Jen Hawkins.
And I'm Andy Fenn.
And this is
the Jen Fenn Podcast. Episode 2.
The big one, we've done three. We've got three big ones.
We've got three big ones.
That are going to escalate. We did Hitman, which was...
I think this will probably be the biggest and most involved.
Yeah, I think so, because we're both coming to it again from the same place.
Yes.
I think our next one's going to be really interesting because we're not.
It's a bit more of a dichotomy, isn't it?
Absolutely. But yeah, this is the big one. This is probably, I would maybe contender for the game of the year for me last year, which is a game that was out years ago.
This is the irony of it, isn't it? It's the fact that, we're saying that our favourite game of 2021 was also
my favourite game of whenever it came out originally.
2007 or whatever it was, yeah.
Yeah, so it is, of course, the Mass Effect Legendary Edition.
Yeah, for the uninitiated, that would be Mass Effect 1, 2 and 3 rolled into one package and remastered and all sorts of other little improvements. And
you had two major remasters of 2021, one of which is a masterclass in how to do a remaster, and another one is an example of how absolutely what to do and
what not to do, basically.
So, yeah, I mean, if it's not already obvious, the GTA trilogy, which I think is one we will have to touch on, because I've never played it, you have.
We will have to talk, that will be in the dishonourable mentions section, which I think will probably be, if it's not in the next episode, it'll be the one after.
Agreed. But yeah, the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, without saying, is a gold standard remaster.
I don't know if I'd go that far. I think we look at it as a gold standard remaster because we've had so many shit remasters.
But it's also a great preservation of some really timeless games. There are some things I wish they had done with it. This is
what I'm trying to get at. I think because it was rumoured for such a long time that it was happening, and they pretty much categorically denied that it was happening.
I think both of us were at a point where we were kind of hope maybe it isn't, just because of how little favour anyone has in EA at this point.
This is the thing. I think
especially BioWare at this point as well.
I think that was it, wasn't it? It was kind of, we really want it to be true, but we also, there was a lot of trepidation with if this is going to happen.
Is it going to be done properly?
And I think after Andromeda,
and I think after Anthem as well.
After Anthem, there's just been a real run of...
BioWare, we knew it just doesn't exist anymore, and I think that was the concern.
That was the concern, yeah. Very much feels like the Legendary Edition was kind of the last chance saloon for the Mass Effect franchise to get back on track, because it was on ice.
I think it's done that.
I think it has.
Because there is going to be a Mass Effect 4.
There is.
We know there is going to be a Mass Effect 4. And it's made me actually interested in Mass Effect 4.
Yeah.
Because Andromeda, we'll have to touch on Andromeda in this, I think. But
Andromeda was okay.
I never finished Andromeda.
I finished it last year. I played it after I played Legendary Edition.
Yeah.
I just thought, I'll go back and I'll give it another go.
I think I should. I was tempted after I finished this one.
I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would, based on kind of because I played half of it.
I think it's just a perfectly serviceable kind of middle shelf RPG at this point.
It just wasn't the same.
No. It tried to do something new, which I respected, but equally it tried to be the best of the other one without it just couldn't hold a candle to what it was following.
And this whole open world vibe that it was going for, which wasn't a Mass Effect thing. It was just kind of something that was permeating every corner of gaming at the time.
It was a bleed from their Anthem project, I think. Everybody wanted this seemingly big open world
with
online
nothing going on in it, really.
With nothing going on in it.
Yeah.
We just touched on it in Hitman 3, but I mean, you're talking about a game that gives you an open sandbox and does everything right.
Yeah.
Andromeda was not that.
No.
It was just empty.
What Hitman does is gives you this illusion of space.
Enormity, yeah.
There are invisible walls everywhere. You just can't see them.
No,
because
and
it's
it
designed
uses it
so meticulously and perfectly to get
and
to the
I think
Earth.
that's what Mass Effect does.
Yes.
This trilogy, these are Mass Effect games. I think that's what these do.
Yeah.
Because you look at, I mean, we will properly start this, but just to start, one of my favourite areas in the whole game is Omega.
Yes.
It's tiny.
Yes, it is.
But you don't feel like it's tiny.
It feels huge in your mind, but it's actually like 3 corridors.
And the same with the Citadel. The Citadel's not as big as it feels either. No. So yeah, I mean, I suppose we should properly start this. As in, I mean, where should we start this?
Where do we begin?
Do we begin with our background on this franchise?
I think we should, yeah. I mean, we talked about this the other day. I could have sworn that we did an entire podcast about this on the old channel.
Maybe we did.
I could not find it.
Oh,
if we did
maybe
it,
we
I couldn't, unless it was a GGS one.
I think it was a GGS one.
Maybe that's what it was.
I don't think it was the trilogy. I think it was Mass Effect 2.
Oh, okay.
Mass Effect 2 had just come out by that point, because this is the interesting thing, is I came to the franchise with Mass Effect 2 on your recommendation.
Was it?
Yeah, because I got an Xbox 360 and I bought Mass Effect with it because I was a Star Wars fan and you were like, you have to play this game.
That's right. Because it wasn't available on PS3.
No, I'd never played it. So when I got a 360, I picked up Mass Effect. I didn't hate it. I just never got into it. I never got more than a couple of hours into it. I just couldn't completely get on board with it. And then I picked up Mass Effect 2 in this obscene sale the year it came out. It was £5 on Game at Christmas, in like a Christmas sale. So I bought it. And Mass Effect 2 is now one of my favourite games of all time.
Yeah.
And I bought it, and that was when I went back to Mass Effect 1, and I kind of stuck with it.
See it in a whole different light at that point.
But I came into the franchise with Mass Effect 2. I think you were on board from the beginning.
I was. First one. Yeah. Mass Effect, I got near enough to release. Mm-hmm. And that was based on how much I enjoyed Knights of the Old Republic.
Yes, same. I think that was how we got onto that's how I got into the recommendation with it, because I played Knights of the Old, and I was a Star Wars fan. So that was how.
I'm not even a Star Wars fan.
No.
But I liked Knights of the Old Republic.
Knights of the Old Republic.
And the reviews, there was a lot of comparisons being drawn in the reviews with the first Mass Effect game, so I picked it up based on that.
And the remake of that, I think we're definitely going to have to do a podcast on.
Oh, yeah.
100% when that finally drops. So, yeah, stay tuned for that. We're planning content way in advance.
Yeah, we're getting way ahead of ourselves. Way
ahead of ourselves. So, yeah, Mass Effect, in terms of how we both came to the franchise, to me, Mass Effect 2, with Andy, it was Mass Effect 1. Do you think that shaped your overall experience of the franchise, if that makes sense? Because I found the mechanics of Mass Effect 2 to be my favourite in terms of it was that more... Because I think this is going to touch on in our Final Fantasy podcast as well. Spoilers, that's what we've been talking about. Is the... I'm not a huge fan of really elaborate RPGs, whereas you love a JRPG. So I think you like the intricacies of your inventory system and
you've played that, but you've played like Western RPGs like Fallout.
Yeah, but I don't think I probably don't go into the real
nitty-gritty of it, the whole
like
thing.
I'll do enough to kind of get by and to do some bits with it, but I really liked Mass Effect 2's completely streamlined RPG system. It was perfect.
And that was a very polarizing change.
It was.
There are still a lot of people that
hated it,
love Mass Effect 1 and hate 2 and 3 because they did do away with that kind of RPG aspect.
I personally found it too much in Mass Effect 1.
I think with Mass Effect 1, the RPG elements are fine to a degree, but then you've got this completely unmanageable inventory.
Like this Omnigel, melting everything down for Omnigel.
And the skill point system, which, by the way, is still in 2 and 3.
But I think it's made better again in 2.
I agree, because you've got this illusion of customization with the fact that there are just so many points that you can put into each kind of tree. You've got like these 20 individual skill points.
And that's interesting. That's just a good point to start with, because I think going back to it, because I did play it for the Legendary Edition. Yes. I went back and made a point to play it. I was surprised how little I felt any of that mattered.
But this is the thing. It's like, what's the difference really between having 2 points in that tree or 3?
Fuck all.
Whereas with Mass Effect 2, you've got like kind of 3 or 4 blocks of skills.
It seemed to me to only matter in that you unlocked abilities when you hit maybe 3 or 4
thresholds.
Of them. So adding to it didn't actually improve anything in game. I didn't feel it was. It probably did, but it didn't feel significant.
You're talking like a damage boost from 3% to 4%.
It really did just feel like you're building towards unlocking an ability rather than because it was actually improving the quality.
So all 2 and 3 really did was take that and condense it down.
Yes.
To something that made some sort of sense and wasn't.
And both have pros and cons to that.
Yeah.
100%. I think there were certain things about Mass Effect 3 that I really, really love. There were certain things... Actually, I think, to me, they were a gradual improvement. But I think, to me, I still think... And I thought this when... This is an interesting... Because obviously we're getting ahead of ourselves again. is I have always thought the second one was my favourite one. And I think it is. But going back to the third one this time, I loved it more than I did the first time.
Me too.
I had a totally different perspective on it. Whereas I know some people went back to it and they felt like they really still hated it or whatever it was. I had a whole new appreciation for Mass Effect 3 when I played it. And we loved it the first time as well, just to be clear.
Yeah.
We weren't people who hated the ending. We weren't people that didn't like it. We really, really loved it, but I think we still thought
2 was the best.
2 was the pinnacle. Going back to the third one now, I think the third one is grossly underrated. I think
too.
they could have done a lot different. I think the PC version has improved the narrative, especially the ending.
And that's something we will talk about as well, which is the modding, kind of in relation to how the difference between a game that's just been modded to perfection and then what that then means if that game is then remastered in the future, and
which is where we are now.
Is where we are now, you know.
Because I said at the beginning, this is a gold standard for remasters, and from my perspective as someone who doesn't yet have a PC, it is. For someone who has a PC and has had the ability to play with community mods over the years, the PC version with certain mods attached, that is Mass Effect.
Well, let me tell you, because I'm very much the same as you in that I didn't have a decent gaming PC until probably 2 years ago, I would say. And it was at that point that
I'll be getting one in the next 18 months.
Oh, you have to.
Yeah.
It was at that point that I kind of, I knew, I was aware of modding, but I'd never really done it seriously before. And I wasn't at all prepared for just how much impressive quality work was available from people who were doing it
100%.
on their own for free, just through a pure love of the game.
It's not even just modding. It's when you're talking about community fixes and patches. Like there's a game that I play on my laptop called, well, everyone's played it, Vampire the Masquerade.
Yeah.
Vampire the Masquerade, if you get this on GOG now, comes as a standard with a community patch, which has fixed the game in every way, shape and form.
Wow.
To the point where the default release version of that game now includes community patches and mods that have improved and fixed the game. And that's just, like you say, a bunch of modders off their own back have decided they have a game that they really love and there's certain things about it, so they fixed it to arguably a better standard and quality than the majority of most AAA developers.
And this is another reason why I was so conflicted when I heard that they were doing the remaster. And it was almost going back to what we were saying about how we weren't sure whether it was actually going to happen.
Yeah.
My concern was they kind of have to look at that modding side of it.
They have to look at what the game has turned into since.
This remaster version has to at least be as good, if not better.
Because this game has enjoyed years of afterlife post-release because of this content.
Having played a modded version, I didn't go crazy with the mods, but I did get texture mods.
The texture mods are insane. That improve the female shepherd are unreal.
The texture mods are insane. There's also upscaling the FMV sequences. I also got the happy ending mod.
And then the major one, I would say, the one which mods the ability to have same-sex relationships in the game, which I think was probably the one of all of them I felt should have been included in the new one, because it's in the code.
But that's it. The whole reason why people were able to mod that content into the game is because it was already there.
Well, Courtney Taylor has been very public, who voices Jack in Mass Effect 2 and 3. It is Courtney Taylor, isn't it? She's been very public about the fact she was grossly disappointed that this was cut because she recorded dialogue for it. And
they've modded it into the Legendary Edition.
They've recorded dialogue. She recorded dialogue for it, and she didn't realise it had been cut until post-release. I mean, obviously she's just a voice actress, not what I mean. She didn't have any creative control over it, but she's been very public when she's been asked about it, about how disappointed she was those elements were removed. So that was the only thing I felt probably should have been restored.
I agree.
Because the reasons that they were cut was because they all came out at a time when it was still a bit hysterical about this kind of thing. The
reaction to Mass Effect 1 and the
idea that can be considered a sex scene.
It was this whole furore about this having sex with aliens and all.
Well, it was because there's that kind of love scene with Liara, isn't there? And I would argue
you can see her ass.
Well, I would argue it's sensual, if anything. I wouldn't say there's anything sexy about it.
It's not erotic. It's not porny.
There's nothing sexy about Liara at that point in the story. Let's be real. She's a character again. That's when I'll touch on.
She comes into her own later.
I never had any appreciation for until I replayed this, and I realised actually the character, when you play the game 1, 2, and 3 back, and you see that evolution of that character.
She's a bit of a wet fart in the beginning, isn't she?
100%. And then by Shadow Broker onwards, it's
she's doing that now, actually. Right.
Fair enough. You're kind of like, here she is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, I suppose with this one then, I mean, starting off, I suppose, chronologically would be my experience with the original Mass Effect, playing it with the Legend. It's probably the most enjoyment I've ever had out of playing Mass Effect 1.
Yes.
100%. And because it fixed a lot of the technical problems that really ruined it for me the first time.
Yeah, and that's kind of why the Legendary Edition took so long to come through. It was more or less in the can. And then
the first one needed the most work, and you can see that's where they put the most work.
And they said, looking at it now in its remastered form, Mass Effect 1 is not up to snuff.
No.
with 2 and 3. So
it was a technical car crash. I remember really, really vividly. This is another thing I think the PC players benefited from because community patches fixed this stuff. The first one on Xbox was a technical. It was
horrible,
very clunky. It had
texture popping,
hideous loading times.
Yeah, really bad.
It was jittery. It was just
textures popping in up and down all over the place.
Exactly.
It was not good.
And I think they did, to their credit, to put a lot of effort into bringing this up to a standard comparable with 2 at the very least.
Yeah.
And to the point where when I played it this time, the only thing that the technical element of it, the technical issues of it were removed. So I felt I could enjoy the story more. It's still my least favorite of the trilogy, 100%. Yes. But I found I had a lot more enjoyment out of it this time because of those technical improvements. And I was really grateful they actually did put in the effort to do that.
Me too.
The Mako.
Oh, God,
They could have very easily, to be honest, done something to get rid of it, or they could have got rid of it because everyone hated it, but they did just enough with it so that it was still a bit of a pain in the ass, but I actually found it quite an amusing pain in the ass this time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They did these little quality of life improvements that just made the game, even when it was still clunky, there was almost this kind of nostalgic enjoyment of how clunky it was. Yeah. So it just turned things that were previously an absolute no-no into something that was almost a bit quite charming. And, you know.
Yeah.
So, it was the most enjoyment I've ever had playing Mass Effect 1 was playing it in this restored version.
Yeah. Yeah, Mass Effect 1 in hindsight is not a game that I have any particularly strong feelings about in terms of the way it delivers its narrative. No. And do you know what I mean? The characters, they're all fine.
And I still felt like I did rush through it a bit just so I could get to 2. I did just enough to make the major story choices and all that kind of thing, just so I could get to 2. Because it's controversial for a lot of Mass Effect fans, but my favourite characters in Mass Effect came in Mass Effect 2.
I wouldn't necessarily say that, but I think you look at characters like Garrus and Tali very differently in 1 because you know how they're going to progress in 2 and 3.
I think you're right, but equally, to me, one of my favourite characters in Mass Effect 2 was Jack.
Jack, yeah.
And Miranda. A lot of people don't like Miranda, but I liked Miranda.
I like Miranda. She's not one of my favourites, but I do like her. And I like Thane as well.
Yep, I love Thane. I love Donnelly and what's
Gabriella.
Gabriella, the 2 engineers on the ship. I like Garrus, but he's a fan favourite, and I really do like Garrus. But I've never felt that level of love for Garrus, and I've never felt the same way about Rex either, as much as I like Rex, but equally Rex. I was a bit like, okay, you know, to me, he's just a good side character. I didn't feel any, that would be the way I would describe it. I don't feel any great camaraderie with the original squad members the way I did with the second one.
Yeah.
That would be how I would describe it. Samara, Thane, Miranda, Jack. That to me was and I think it's because I started with Mass Effect 2 maybe. So I don't feel this great affinity with the original Mass Effect squad. And I think that's by consequence of me playing the second one first.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. But I also agree with you that they are better characters. Mm-hmm. I think first game is really let down by Ashley being there.
I don't like... I don't like... oh, God, what's his name?
Caden.
I don't like him either.
See, I didn't like him.
No.
And that we're going to get back to the modding conversation now, because I didn't dislike Caden, but I didn't care for it. I always killed off Ashley because I just could not stand her.
And she's a racist piece of shit.
She's a racist, xenophobic asshole.
And if she survives to Mass Effect 3, she is awful in Mass Effect 3.
Yeah.
She's vile in Mass Effect 3, whereas Caden isn't. I don't dislike Caden.
He's perfectly pleasant.
I just think he's a bit of a wet fart. But I know what you're going to say, and I agree with you. I think Caden is a better companion to a gay male shepherd than to a female one.
100%. And this is the thing.
And that would change my perspective on it too.
Yeah. I mean, I was very much like, I don't know whether this says more about that I had anger issues when I was in my early 20s or however old we were when this came out. 2007. How old would I have been?
Because we were working together when Mass Effect 1, 2 and 3 came out, because we both...
So that actually would tie in, because we were working at the place that must not be named.
Yes.
So I would have been a very angry person, very angry, very depressed. So I would tend to gravitate towards a female shepherd and go down the renegade story branch, because I just loved being this bitch. Mm-hmm. And, you know, someone gave me attitude and I shot them in the face. That was the peak.
And this, agreed, 100%. And that's how I played. I played Shepard as kind of and this is the only thing I will say about the Renegade and Paragon options as I've gone on. I loved them at the time. But if we're going to do a Mass Effect 4, I would like to see a more nuanced middle ground.
Which is kind of what they tried to do with Andromeda and didn't quite
because
work.
my Shepard is very much paragon to her friends and a complete nightmare to anybody else.
So it can't. It needs to not be as binary.
And I think because you have to choose a binary to get certain choices.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree with you because you're saying about. But to me, my Shepard, in theory, I would have personally played her as probably as a gay woman.
Yeah.
And been with Jack.
Well, this is the thing, and this is what we're talking about with these mods, is that my favourite, and it's something I'm about to do again because a lot of these mods have now been ported to the Legendary Edition to improve the Legendary Edition even more.
Yes.
But this was when I played the originals with the mods.
Yeah.
Was playing as the stock male Shepard.
Yeah.
With the same gender romancing Kaidan from Mass Effect 1, which is brilliant because you have this kind of burgeoning romance in 1, which doesn't really ever get anywhere. Obviously, you have the scene towards the end before Ilos, or before Vermeer, or whenever it is it kicks in. But then you have this issue in Mass Effect 2 where they're kind of on the outs with each other. Yeah. Because Kaidan / Ashley, they're not really... They have a cameo, really, in 2 more than anything. And then that character will then return in 3.
Yes, it's on Horizon, isn't it? We go to Horizon,
And Mass Effect 3 was kind of when BioWare / EA decided that same-gender, same-sex romances were an acceptable thing to have in the game now. So you can...
good, thank you.
So if in an unmodded version of Mass Effect 3, you can pursue that, but it doesn't quite feel
sort of
organic
by that point, doesn't it?
Because it's like you've known this person since Mass Effect 1. Why suddenly now?
It only works if you romance female Shepard, then you can see that evolution 100%.
Yeah.
But I agree. I said to you, if I were playing, I agree. I think my perspective of Kaidan would be totally different if it was in a gay relationship with male Shepard.
As I say, the absolute best experience I've had playing this game was playing as the stock male Shepard, romancing Kaidan with the gay mod from 1 through 2 into 3, and then having this big kind of culmination with the run to the beam, and that scene had so much more gravity. I agree. And I was like, oh, that's actually so much nicer.
I agree, and that's the thing I find when I was playing this time is I personally, from my personal perspective, didn't think there was any really, I mean, apart from Liara, which is who I chose this time, I don't think FemShep actually has very good romance options.
She doesn't.
But that's because I'm not a huge, most people choose Garrus.
I'm not, and I must admit that's
it's a very sweet story. It's lovely, but I was like, to me, I don't know. I think if I for the perfect world, I would have partnered my Shepard with Jack, or Miranda. That would have been how I would have played it, and those because I like those two characters as well, so I would have wanted to see that go through. So I went with Liara, which again changed my perspective on Liara as well. Yeah. So I stuck with Liara this time, and it's just because I didn't think FemShep's options were very interesting the entire time. That was the thing. I'm really looking forward to playing the PC version of it eventually and playing it with all those mods
I'm
on.
kind of out of this kind of new grind with Endwalker, I will go back and I will play the whole trilogy, the Legendary trilogy on PC with the mods.
Yeah. Yeah, I was saying I'm picking up a PC in the next year, and probably the first thing I'm going to do. Yeah,
when I think about how good an experience it was playing the original versions with the mods, I just think the Legendary Edition with the mods is just going to be off the chain.
It's peak Mass Effect by that point.
I can't even describe how impressed I am by the work that modders do.
It's incredible. And unpaid work. They are the unsung heroes of the world, modders.
Just through a love of the games.
And they are truly doing the Lord's work, I would argue.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I don't feel there's a lot to say about Mass Effect 1.
You have to play it.
It sets the stage.
You have to play it. It sets the stage. It's setting the scene for what's to come. And there's in terms of lore building, it's worth playing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's necessary. But I that's the thing. That's the word I would use for it's necessary. And that's it. Yeah.
And this is the thing, actually. I've just twigged that this is kind of weird. We talked about Hitman in the World of Assassination trilogy in our last podcast, and kind of how elegantly those 3 games fit together. Yeah. And this is actually kind of exactly the same thing.
It does. When you play it I think this is what the beauty of the Legendary Edition is because it is 3 games in one. It's 3 games in one package. You do kind of play them as one game. So in that context, it is, but that's the thing. It feels like a prelude to the rest of the story.
Yeah.
It's very much the launch pad for the rest of the franchise.
And of course, for the uninitiated, all your choices can be imported from 1 to 2 and then from 1 and 2 into 3.
Which is, I would think, is probably one of the best things about, and this is what caused a lot of controversy with the ending as well, which we'll get to. But
yeah.
I think really, for me, the franchise hits its stride in terms of becoming an instant classic with the second one.
I agree.
The second one is just perfect. And I think this is one thing where you and I will differ, and it's quite interesting, is the beginning of Mass Effect 2 hits very differently for people who played the first one to people who are coming in with the second one.
That is absolutely right.
Because you've spent probably 70 plus hours with this story, with this character, other characters on this ship. It starts on the Normandy, everybody on the old SR1 Normandy, the old school Normandy. And then within 5 minutes, Shepard has been blasted into space and he or she is dead.
Yeah.
And it's horrible because you see the pipe on the back of the suit is ruptured.
Yeah.
And you see Shepard thrashing around and suffocating while they're falling onto a planet.
So you're like, you play this character for however many dozens of hours
Hundreds
in the first
of hours, arguably.
And then import them into Mass Effect 2 to watch them basically
die.
just be killed off in literally the first 5 minutes.
And they are killed off. There's no dispute about it. There's some people who say, oh no, they rescued it. No, Shepard's dead.
Shepard is
dead. Like, Shepard is dead within the first 10 minutes of the story.
Yeah.
The whole
that's
thing.
A gut punch.
It is.
And
I mean, that's
so,
the thing.
As a narrative choice, it's bold and so good.
It's so good. And it sets
up... Because you literally just sat there with the controller in your hand going, what the fuck just happened?
Because it's genius, because it completely uncouples and untethers you from the original one.
Yeah.
Because it now gives that Shepard an opportunity to go into a completely different place. You're not tethered to the Alliance. You've basically been plucked from the grave into this completely new life.
Yeah.
Which is with Cerberus.
Yes.
Which is... So, because that's the thing I find with Mass Effect 3 is you get this culmination of the Alliance and Cerberus.
Yeah.
And you really see those two things tussle in the third one. But the second one, for all intents and purposes, you're an agent of Cerberus.
Yeah. And Cerberus is very briefly name-checked in the first game in a side quest.
Yeah.
And they sound like bad news, but you don't really, that's not really explored in any great detail.
They're a pro-human splinter cell, they're described as, aren't they?
Yeah.
Humans first, but very,
aliens.
very ruthless about it too.
Yeah. But then, of course, you owe them your life at this point at the beginning of Mass Effect 2 because they recovered the body and brought you back to life. So your Shepard is very conflicted about it, but kind of just goes along with it for now. And it's kind of, we'll see what happens.
And it introduces you to an entirely new cast of characters.
That's it. You've got Cerberus agents.
You've got Miranda straight off the bat. And then you've got Jacob.
Yeah.
Then you run into Caden. So you get these flashes from the first one, but it's very much this idea. It's a genius. As I said, killing off Shepard is a genius idea because it completely uncouples you from the obligation to continue completely with that original story.
Yeah.
It allows you to continue the story, but you can do it from a completely different element. And it's like I said, it just sets the stage for just kind of this it's almost like it's like a reboot.
Yeah.
That's the only way I can describe it, is it just throws you in with this entirely new way of looking at it.
Yeah.
And so the story is that you're sent after the Reapers, and this idea is that you're untethered from the Alliance and all the bureaucracy, and you're basically given every resource you need by the elusive man.
Yes. He was like the head honcho of Cerberus.
Yeah, and he is this shadowy figure that you
you
immediately know there's something a bit untowards with this guy. Like, it's a bit like, okay.
And so does your Shepard. There's no sugarcoating the fact that your Shepard is like not happy about the arrangement.
No.
In any way, shape or form.
And that also leads me to the other thing is, obviously, with the exception of Jennifer Hale, the voice acting quality in the second one is miles better than the first one.
Agreed. Jennifer Hale is perfection from the word go.
From the start to finish. And that's the thing I can't stand about playing as a male Shepard is is it Mark Meir?
Mark Meir,
I can't stand his performance as Shepard. I just
in the
find
first
it so
game,
blunt.
not good.
No.
But from 2 onwards, he's much better.
I said blunt, I meant bland. I just find it so...
Yeah.
It feels to me like Mass Effect should be played as a female Shepard.
Yeah.
The quality of the...
She's just so good.
Jennifer Hale's brilliant in everything she's in, to be fair.
She is.
Well, almost everything, but...
And she's in pretty much almost everything.
Yeah, she is.
She's some way.
A lot of stuff.
Even if she's just a side character, she's on the list for
she's
most games.
She's tangentially involved in in everything. Yeah,
right. Jennifer's just passing through. I just bumped into her in the corridor. Oh, let's get her to come in and voice this.
She said she's got a free hour, yeah. She's playing as a vendor in a video, just a vendor you can buy a gun from. But yeah, the second one is just, it takes, I mean...
It shakes it up.
It does. I mean, it's almost comparable, again, to what we'll be talking about with Final Fantasy when you go from a Realm Reborn into Heaven's Ward. It just goes up.
Yes.
It takes a very kind of fine, but admittedly quite vanilla beginning, and then just... And that's the thing. Everything about it is, because one of the things I love about this game more than anything else is just those moments in it where that soundtrack booms while something really dramatic is happening.
Yeah.
Like the suicide mission, arguably, like we were talking about favourite levels in Hitman earlier. Mass Effect 2's suicide mission from start to finish with that music, that pacing, everything.
One of the finest set pieces in gaming history.
That ending is just sublime.
Yeah.
It's absolutely perfect.
And this is the thing. It's like we're talking about choice. And if you haven't played it before, it's really difficult to kind of impress upon a Mass Effect layman how much gravity these choices have in what actually happens. Not counting the ending to Mass Effect 3, of course. We'll get onto that later. But, you know, that suicide mission, you know, you go into it with 12 squad mates.
It's a testament to the quality of the writing, because every character is a character. And even if you weren't fond of them, you're still bereft if something happens to them.
Yeah.
You still feel like you've let the side down if somebody hasn't made it out.
Yeah.
To the point where when I first did it, admittedly, I got everybody out. But when I went back and did like a less intense playthrough, perhaps, people died. And I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Which is another thing that came on to in Mass Effect 3 we'll come back to.
Yeah. But it plays into this whole loyalty system as well, because you're kind of given these side quests to do that are optional.
Yeah, which you need to complete in order to get everybody to survive, I believe.
You need to complete a certain amount of them to progress the story anyway. So there is some loyalty that you have to get at least a few people on site, because you also have to have at least 2 squad mates loyal to actually drag you out. At the end of the suicide mission.
Because it is possible for everybody to die.
Literally everyone, including Shepard. Yeah.
The game can end there.
And you then can't import your save into Mass Effect 3.
Exactly. It is possible for it to just be over at the end of Mass Effect 2. And the Elusive Man is just sat in his chair having a fag going, fucking hell.
Bollocks.
All that money. All that money. And everybody's dead.
Yeah, we can't afford to bring her back again, for God's sake.
Yeah, but it's just, Mass Effect 2 just kind of feels like a fully realised vision of what they wanted to do. It's got that space opera feeling to it with the music, the characters, the set pieces. And lest we forget Arya T'Loak.
Oh, lordy. What a
when
fabulous
we're talking
character.
about voice acting, Carrie-Anne Moss as Arya.
Carrie-Anne Moss is a queen.
She has made some questionable acting choices over the years, but I would say, most people say Matrix. I think this is her finest performance.
Have you watched Humans?
Yes.
Season 2?
No.
Watch season 2 because she is in it.
In it?
And she
Okay.
is absolutely fucking brilliant.
She is great. She's also in Jessica Jones. If he was in Jessica Jones, she plays a very sharky lawyer in Jessica Jones, and she's very good in that. She makes some questionable choices, like she was in that dreadful Silent Hill and that new Matrix film, if reviews are to be believed. Arya T'Loak is just, that's what I mean about that fusion of location and character and music. Because when you go to Omega and you go to Afterlife and
the thumping music,
thumping bass,
you can feel it in your brain.
Dance foot. That's just, and that's the thing. When I played that game again, for that section, I put my headphones on. And having that music just thundering through while you've got Arya just being a queen. Yeah.
She's basically the head bitch.
She's a crime boss. Yeah. And she's completely believable as a crime boss. Because obviously you get this idea that the Asari are they're efficient. Like you get Asari commandos that are the envy of the galaxy in terms of military efficiency up there with the Turians. And then you've got the Asari that run, what's that planet called what the Asari run?
Thessia.
Is it Thessia? You visit it in the second one.
Ilium.
Ilium, yes. You go to those places and you just get this impression that if the Asari are in the equation, they're doing it better than everyone else.
That's it, yeah. They're just basically the most highly evolved species.
So when it comes to a crime boss, you believe that Arya is in charge.
But that's the thing. Until that point, we've only known the Asari as these kind of elegant, softly spoken, very matriarchal. Mm-hmm. Arya's kind of a real curveball.
She's a rogue element, for sure. Because even the Asari, they are actually really low-key, kind of like, oh, yeah. But they don't want to admit it because it's unpalatable to say that...
her relationship with the Asari counselor is interesting, isn't it?
And that's the thing, they're kind of cheering her on, but they can't publicly be seen to be doing so.
I can't publicly endorse your behaviour, but go on. Go for it, love.
If someone has to be doing it, we're glad it's one of ours.
Yeah.
So that's it. But Arya is just that. I think that's brilliant. It. When you go to Omega for the first time,
which is early on,
very early on, and that's when you I think that's when it really starts to set the stage for the rest of the story.
Yeah.
You just meet this cast of characters.
They're just so far beyond anyone you've met in the first game. You know,
because you're introduced to new races of creatures in 2 as well, aren't you? So you've got the what are those creatures called? They're almost a bit like Star Trek-y looking. They're on because they have the plague on Omega.
Oh, Batarians.
Is it Batarians? Yes.
Vorcha.
Vorcha. Yeah, so there's Vorcha and I think they are Batarians as well.
But the Batarians are in the first game.
Are they?
Oh, they were only in Bring Down the Sky, though.
Yeah, maybe that's it. That's what I'm thinking of. But so yeah, you get introduced to a whole... It just expands the universe massively. Yeah. And I find things like the Citadel was a bit better to navigate in the second one compared to the first one. It just felt a bit more... It wasn't smaller. It just felt a lot more compact and every area was interesting.
It was more abstracted.
Yeah.
You didn't have to run all the way from A to B. You just kind of went to your little terminal and said, this is where I want to go. And you just kind of went there.
And it was less, but it was less is more.
Yes.
That was the thing. So it just, 2 just really fine-tuned everything.
That's it. It was just a very refined version that just took everything from the first game and made it bigger and better and bolder.
And that ending is nothing short of heroic. And it's important to mention because that it's important in terms of setting the tone for the third one.
Yes.
Is the way that, if you do everything right in that second one, the way that game ends, you are pumped by the end of that game. But to the point I wanted to jump, I jumped straight back in and started another playthrough.
Yeah.
It just leaves you on such a heroic note.
And that's the thing, isn't it? It can be one of two things. Either you can finish it and save everyone and feel like the best person in the world, or it can just go so horribly wrong. And you feel like an absolute garbage person.
Comically embarrassing how badly it can go. Do you know what I mean? Everybody is dead. It's almost funny as if everyone's dead and Shepard's not, because you kind of come back to the ship and go...
there's just coffins everywhere.
Yeah, you're like...
well, that happened.
Imagine going to that debrief. Well, Miranda's gone.
And so is everyone else.
So is everyone else. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, whoops.
But yeah, so I mean, 2 is also significant in the sense that it is an example to me of how you should do DLC.
Oh, yes.
Because Shadow Broker is hands down one of the best pieces of DLC content I've ever played.
Yes, I agree.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
I think it costs something within the region of about maybe 10 to 12.
I didn't think it was that much.
It wasn't much, but you got a good sort of, like, if you played it from start to finish, I think it was a good maybe 3 hours or so. It wasn't huge.
No.
But what it did in that time, it was set on Ilium initially, wasn't it?
Yes.
Am I right in thinking? And it's basically you meeting up with Liara Tassoni again from the first one. And it charts, you're very much the side character here.
Yes.
As in you're just there to watch the narrative because it's you watching Liara Tassoni going from being this kind of dweeb.
Oh, very wet blanket.
To almost becoming like Arya Taloq.
Yeah.
It's kind of like she basically just becomes the Shadow Broker, which is just this
the
kind
biggest
of
twist ever.
Yeah, so she's basically an the information broker to end all information brokers.
Yeah,
which is an integral player in galactic politics, everything. And you're just watching this evolution of this character, and you're very much a side
just
character
along
there,
for the ride. Yeah,
just watching this evolution happen.
And it's... even at one point, even if your shepherd is like a complete bitch on wheels, there is a point where your shepherd kind of grabs Liara by the arm and is like, "Are you okay?"
Yeah, literally that. You're just kind of like, "You're right, darling." It's almost a checking in, like, "All right,
yes,
cool."
Yes, this is quite a personality change.
Literally, I'm both terrified and aroused.
Are you feeling quite well?
Literally, but that's it. I mean, in terms of how DLC should be done, that to me is brilliant. And
actually, I know it's a bit more polarizing, but Overlord is actually a brilliant piece of content.
Overlord is significant to me because of that really dramatic shift in tone.
It's a tough thing to actually play through.
It's when you really see Cerberus for what it is.
That's it.
And that becomes significant again in the third one.
Yeah.
I remember us playing that content together, and I think we discussed it. We discussed this. I think one of us either wrote an article about this, or we discussed it on the GGS podcast.
I think I wrote about this one.
Just seeing David covered in pipes and just he's rigged up to an AI system, isn't he? And there's this idea, this rogue AI is you've got to destroy this rogue AI because it's killing people and destroying the facility. But what you don't realise is this guy's highly autistic brother has been forced into this...
Like rigged up in the most brutal, unnecessarily brutal
eyes
fashion.
Are pegged open, all this kind of thing. And it's basically because this highly, highly autistic... Because he has a mind that works like a computer.
Yeah.
So his brother just thinks, oh, what if we did hook him up?
Yeah.
but never unplug him again.
Yeah.
And it's horrific. It's genuinely
really,
horrific.
really
And that's the thing. When I played it, I was like, ooh.
Yeah.
I mean, we play games like Silent Hill, we played horror games, but we didn't expect that to come from Mass Effect. And it was almost a fuck.
It's because most of the scary kind of horror stuff we've played before, there's not really that kind of morality side to it.
It's an ethical minefield, that one, isn't it?
Absolute ethical
because
minefield.
you can choose to leave him there.
Yeah.
That's the thing. You can choose to either send him off to the is it the Grisham Academy?
Yeah.
For gifted people, which again comes back in Mass Effect 3.
Yeah.
If you just choose to save David and send him to Grisham Academy, he will be there when you go there in Mass Effect 3.
Which is arguably the best place for him.
Which is exactly what I did. I was like, oh, you can say leave him in the care of his brother. I mean, that for a renegade choice, even for a renegade choice, is a dark choice.
Yeah. And I know there were a lot of concerns about that particular piece of content from kind of autism awareness groups. And I can see exactly why. Mm-hmm. I can absolutely see where they're coming from.
To me, it's almost a comment on the exploitation of people like that, because everybody assumes that everyone who has autism is Rain Man.
Yeah.
And that they're going to be some genius at counting cards or something like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was just that content is a real curveball.
Yeah.
That one. I think, again, that's a brilliant piece of content. That's the actual gameplay of that one can be a bit hit and miss, because I think it does go on for a bit in certain sections.
It does, yeah.
But it's better than the only one I would say that I didn't really enjoy was the Arrival one.
Arrival's okay.
That's what I mean. It's okay.
It's just okay.
It's okay. It's
again,
a springboard to 3.
Setting the scene for 3, but in a way that's actually kind of unnecessary, because if you skip it, nothing seems to change.
Well, that's the thing I was going to ask you, because I can't remember. Does the Batarian conflict come into play in the 3rd one if you don't do Arrival? Because you destroy the Batarian planet, don't you, to save the galaxy?
But I don't know. I can't remember.
I think they just assume it happened.
Yeah.
Don't they? So
if you skip Arrival altogether, it just seems to just happen anyway.
Yeah. So arguably, Arrival was just kind of, it was a prelude.
Yeah.
It was almost a bit. It was a bit of promo for 3.
Yeah.
That's what it functions as. It wasn't. I mean, like I said, because it doesn't. If you don't play it, it doesn't change anything in 3.
Nothing drastic. No.
There might be a line of dialogue that you wouldn't have been privy to, but it doesn't change much apart from that. I mean, it's all about reinforcing this idea of indoctrination from Prothean artifacts, doesn't it? And Reaper artifacts.
And that's the thing. I mean, Mass Effect 3 opens with you kind of being tried as a war criminal almost. Which is,
so that comes, we may as well sort of segue onto that then, because you leave Mass Effect 2 on such a high note.
And then you're just basically in the shit.
And then,
and
that's
in the opening cutscene of 3.
And that's we've discussed this, and this is something we talk about when we talk about this together all the time. Mass Effect 3's ending could be better.
Yeah.
But Mass Effect 3 is the ending.
It is the ending.
Because from start to finish, this is endgame.
Yeah.
The whole thing.
Is everything in this game is culminating in the end.
Because the game is a series of endings to different parts of different stories. And
that's what people aren't grasping, is that the whole game is the ending and you're actually playing it and interacting with it.
Yeah, because there are so many moments in this game, because everyone goes, oh, well, this choice didn't mean anything and whatever. And I'm like, whatever, it doesn't matter. There are points in this game that are heartbreakingly poignant. Like the ending for Thane Krios.
Yes.
Is devastating.
Yeah.
It's a really, really devastating sequence of the game. And that, again, is an ending to that piece of the story.
Yeah.
You've got the whole thing with Miranda and her sister. That's an ending to the story. Again, it's not...
The fall of Thessia.
Exactly. That's an ending to a story.
Yeah.
It's just a series of different endings. But the thing that gets me about it when I play it now is just how unrelentingly bleak it is.
It's so bleak. Because you kind of get to a point... There's the first half of it, you're still very much, let's go and get the Reapers. We're going to win. It's going to be fine. We've got to figure this out. The Crucible business with the blueprint for this weapon of mass destruction.
You're confronted with the gravity of what you're actually doing, which is you are just a group of organic beings against this super element.
Super race of these warm, but basically space machines.
And in actuality, you actually don't have a chance.
No.
There's very
You are an ant. You are an atom compared to these things.
The chances of you winning this conflict are actually 1 in a million.
And that's something that doesn't quite start to sink in until at least halfway through.
I think it kicks in fully when you get to Thessia, when you tried to go to that artifact.
Yeah.
And what's his name? Kai Leng. And then there is the other section where I think you can go with, so there's that section, which is when he takes the information away from you, which is arguably supposed to be the key to the Crucible.
Yeah.
That gets taken away from you and destroyed, so you don't have it. So it means you can't finish the Crucible.
Yeah. Or so you think.
Well, so you think.
Time.
And then the other part of it that was significant to me is when you go with Miranda to the Cerberus base. Or what is it? Or it's somewhere where the Cerberus have set up a base.
They basically set up this kind of residential.
It's a refugee facility, isn't it?
Facility, and kind of basically tricked people into going there.
It's not a refugee facility.
It's not a refugee facility.
But you learn a lot about Project Lazarus.
Yes.
And there's this really interesting section of the game which really spun me when I played it, where basically Shepard has this existential crisis where she's like, am I the real Shepard or am I just a copy of Shepard?
Yeah.
And it's just this kind of, and you think about it and you think, fuck, that's actually really...
Yeah.
Because it is just then they basically took the material that was left and then rebuilt it from machines and all sorts of other things. And it's just this kind of crisis of like, are you Shepard?
Am I still me?
Have you been Shepard this whole time? Or, it's...
I just think there's this real turning point where the whole cast of characters start to realise that they are onto a loser.
It feels like it's a long death march.
Exactly what it is.
It's just this long...
You are just treading towards the grave.
That's exactly it. It's kind of like, it reminds me, it's a really strange comparison, but I don't know if you've ever seen, you remember the TV show Blackadder?
Yes.
Do you remember the last episode of Blackadder in World War II?
Yeah.
Where they're about to go over the top of the trench?
Yeah.
And they all know they're going to die.
Yeah.
And they're making a joke and making light of it and saying, oh, I'll see you on the other side. But the second they went over that trench, they were all dead. That's what it feels like. Everybody in this story is bigging each other up. But everybody...
We have to go and do it. We have to go and try.
But the second we reach our head above the parapet, we're going to die.
Done. Yeah. And I have to say, please, if you haven't played it, please turn this off. I'm begging you. We did do a spoiler warning in the beginning, didn't we?
Yeah, we probably should just preface everything. Every episode we do is going to be...
We are going to be spoiler-tastic, when we do these retrospectives. But
even if we do something that's brand new, chances are we're going to talk about it in depth. So it's...
But being a British person and that final stage being in London...
There's something
so weird
about that, isn't there? It's the end game of it is in...
Like, that's Big Ben.
Yeah.
There's a Reaper towering over Big Ben.
I think that's something I really admired about the game, actually, because there is a tendency for these kinds of games to be very American-centric. And the same with cinema and everything else, because it's Hollywood. Everything tends to be very America-centric.
Yeah.
Whereas this game does... I mean, I don't know where you start the game.
Vancouver.
So again, Canada.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of love for the British Commonwealth in this game. So when you find... And that's the thing, I agree with you there. When you go back to Earth, which is... The end. And this is when you're coming to... And that's another sequence that's worthy of mention, is that whole sequence where you can call your friends before you're about to go to the... Including your love interest for what's supposedly one last time. And the conversations that you can have. But again, it's all this very much positivity through gritted teeth.
Yeah.
When you know it and you'd sat there and you're just thinking, we're never going to speak to these people again.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah.
There's a very real possibility we're never going to speak to these people again.
I just thought that, we've spent this entire trilogy zipping around to the farthest reaches of space and we're finishing here.
And the end of the story, I suppose that's the poetry of it, really, is it's about humanity ultimately and all humanity's place in the galaxy and everything. Yes,
humanity has colonized other areas of the universe now, but it started here and it will end here.
The end game all boils down to a small capital in the UK.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the thing. You get drip-fed information throughout the game, don't you, that the rest of the world is dead.
Yeah.
That there's huge portions of the world that have been wiped out.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty certain that they talk about Canada has pretty much gone by the end of... Because I'm sure Caden says something about his family, doesn't he? Being in Canada on Earth somewhere. But I'm certain there's little drip-fed bits.
Literally that
when you go to the when you go to the Citadel, when you go to the Spectre... thingy, when you've got that waiting room area, because that's another series, the place that's really heavy. There's almost that reception area, isn't there, with the do you remember the Asari women? They're on the desk, and it's all the refugees coming to ask about information from their families and their military relatives. And there's that one woman who's waiting for her wife to come back, the Asari commando, and it's every time you go there's a bit more information, and it becomes very apparent that she's not
dead.
Coming back.
There's so much,
and there's the old woman who's waiting to hear from her son.
Yeah.
who's an Alliance military member.
Yeah.
Because there's also a really fucked up thing about Joker's sister. Joker talks about having a sister. And there is, I think it's the medical facility that's on the Citadel. There's 2 Asaris on that medical facility, and one of them's a psychiatrist and another one's an Asari commando. And the Asari commando is beyond traumatized.
Yes.
And won't talk to anybody.
Is that the one that keeps asking for a gun?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it turns out that she had to kill somebody to stop them from screaming, so she didn't give the location away. And it turns out the woman she shot was Joker's sister. Yeah. And Joker never finds out.
And that's something that you kind of really have to go out of your way to actually find out.
But when you hear it, you're like,
shit.
What?
Yeah.
So this woman broke her leg and was in so much pain, she was screaming. And if she shot her so that she didn't give the location of the rest of the survivors away.
Yeah.
And that's bleak. But that whole game is just peppered with things like that. It's a real, by the time you get to the end of that game, I think it's a real...
I have to say that last couple of hours where you land on Earth and go through London to the end is probably one of the most tense, stressful things I've ever experienced in a game.
I agree, actually.
Because I knew what was coming. I knew we were heading to the end. You kind of got the gravity of this beloved
you lose
trilogy.
Hope. Don't you?
You've got this thing where this trilogy of games that you've loved so much is about to come to an end, and that's hard enough to deal with.
Yeah. On top of the fact that this game has been really unapologetic about the fact it's not going to end well.
No, this is not going to end well for anyone.
No, nobody's coming out of this without scars. Nobody's coming out of this. Very few are coming out of it alive.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing I think we need to talk about is that section from running to the beam onwards.
Yeah.
A hell of a sequence that I don't think I fully appreciated until I played it again this time.
And I tell you now, having that same gender romance mod and having romance Caden from the beginning and obviously then being on the outs in 2 and coming back together in 3. But if you have him in your party when you're running to the beam and that scene where he gets knocked down and you send him away on the Normandy, oh my God, don't leave me. Yeah. Oh my God.
That's a
heartbreaking,
spicy suit to deal with.
Heartbreaking.
Because I think I think because my shepherd romanced Liara this time, and I'm pretty sure Liara's in your earpiece as you're running to the beam. I'm certain that happened. I'll have to check it again because I'm going to play it again after the end of this.
We have to do it.
We have to do it. I'm pretty certain Liara's in your earpiece as you're running towards it, and of course the bombs are dropping, things are exploding. You can see people running alongside you are suddenly not there anymore. Yeah. And you keep running and running and running. And then, because you're knackered by the time you get to it, you're done. Hit with artillery.
Yeah.
You are in really shit shape by the time you get to the Citadel. And you can hear everybody. Because there's almost this idea, or there was for a long time, that maybe the entire final sequence is just a death illusion, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you get to the Citadel and you can hear your squad members screaming in your earpiece, like, where are they? Where are they? Where are they? I can't see them. I can't hear them. They didn't make it. Nobody made it. And then they're like, oh, Shepard made it. And you're like, did she?
Yeah.
Because there's something quite surreal about that whole end sequence. Very surreal. It's
you could almost think it was a fever dream of someone in the death throes.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's the thing, because the ending arguably ties into that theory, because for years we were convinced that the indoctrination theory was the correct way of interpreting the ending, and I still think it is to a degree.
The indoctrination theory holds a lot of water for me.
I think the only appropriate ending for this game is destroy.
Yes.
There's no other option.
Yeah. Well, we need to get onto that in a minute. But what I did want to touch on, which we kind of skipped over, which I have to talk about, because we mentioned the opening of Mass Effect 2 and how effective it is. Can we please talk about the opening of Mass Effect 3?
Oh, God, with the child.
The whole thing, obviously it opens up and your shepherd is kind of
grounded
in dire straits, grounded.
Yeah, they've basically been stripped of their titles. They're not allowed to fly anymore.
Being tried as a war criminal.
You're basically in some form of parliament, aren't you?
Yeah.
Some sort of alliance military parliament. And then
all of a sudden they kind of get wind of the fact that the Reapers are here. And it's very much like Mass Effect 2. It all happens in the space of 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You're kind of, you're made aware of the fact that your shepherd is not in a good place. And
that sets the tone, though.
Yeah.
Because like you said, the unrelentingly bleak tone of Mass Effect 3 is you ended Mass Effect 2 on such a heroic note.
Yeah.
And all of that's gone at the beginning of it.
And after everything that you've achieved.
Yeah. You're basically branded as a war criminal.
Yeah.
You're not a hero anymore.
No.
You've basically you've crossed into something else. It's just totally taken away.
You then go from that to, okay, we have reason to believe that the Reapers are almost here. Like literally almost minutes
and
away.
You're kind of there like, what do you mean? Bang.
Yeah. They're like, please help us. We need to know how to deal with this. And Shepard's like, what do you mean deal with it? They're here. We just have to now
Also,
deal
what
with
the
it
fuck
and
do you expect
survive.
me to do about it?
Yeah.
Like, I'm
I
a
have
human
no
being,
ship.
I'm one
I have
person.
no ship, I have no crew. You've taken
Yeah.
all that away from me. And then the next minute, they hear a rumbling from outside the window and a fucking Reaper lands in the middle of Vancouver.
Yeah, literally. And that's it.
And then another one, and another one. And in the space of 10 seconds, there's 5 of the fucking things.
And you basically watch a major city
Crumble.
leveled
Yeah.
in space of 5 minutes because you're running across it. You're running across this base to try and get to the ship and all this kind of thing. And you encounter something basically, and I'm convinced this is real. That this what happens in this thing is this little boy who Shepard keeps seeing. Because there's an argument about whether this is a Reaper fantasy or whatever. I'm convinced it's real, and I'm convinced that subsequent sightings of it are the...
is real.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that child also dies.
Yes.
A child gets onto a rescue ship. The rescue ship takes off, gets shot out of the sky, in 2 seconds flat. And Shepard tries to rescue him from the vents, but he's frightened and runs away.
Yeah. And then Shepard sees the kid killed by the Reapers, and it's at that point where you see in that resolve in your Shepard's face, where it's like, okay, you've gone too fucking far now.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's almost this crushing. It's the human spirit, the crushing. It's just this slow erosion of spirit.
Yeah,
and they spend the rest of the game having nightmares about that child.
Yeah,
it's not a direct commentary on it, but you can certainly see it that way. Is the consequences of war. Mm-hmm. Because all through this entire game, there are huge sections of this game where you're confronted with the consequences of conflict.
Yes,
and that either comes in the form of refugee camps, like the one that's at the Citadel. There's people there who are desperately trying to find their relatives and their friends and all this kind of thing. They have been cast out of their home countries or home planets. In this case, they've got nowhere to go because their planets are dead.
Yeah.
When you go to the Turian planet, it's dead.
Yeah.
The whole Turian planet is gone. By the time you get there, it's been completely leveled. You can see it from space. It's burning from space. They're refugees on the Citadel. And then actually, this is a really important point we need to come to in a second. People who are dying, the choices people have had to make in order to survive, to the point where you think, well, we're going to die anyway. Was the choice worth it?
Yeah.
Did I make the right call? It's just this whole, I wouldn't say it's a commentary because I don't think it's a deliberate one, but it's a parallel to the consequences of actual war and conflict. And it deals with it really sensitively, but really effectively as well. And then in amongst that, you're trying to kind of salvage some kind of joy. And that's where the Citadel DLC comes in.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, to me, brilliant. But the second time I played it with this playthrough, it almost made me it made me so emotional.
Upset, yeah.
Because you're finally playing it as it was meant to be played, because it was post-release content the first time.
Yeah.
But this time you're playing it
it's tied into the main
story. So you're playing it contextually where it's supposed to be. So by the time you get to the end of it and you've had this big party, because that's what it is. It's basically you're planning a big party.
And you're having a party with all the crewmates from this
all
game,
of
from
the games,
the previous games. They all come back together. But it's very much like, oh, this is it.
It's basically your own wake.
That's exactly what it is.
It's basically you're having your own funeral. All of you are having your own funeral.
Yeah.
Everybody stood around reminiscing about the best times. There's all this Easter egg content from previous conversations and all that. Some pretty hilarious dialogue.
Yeah, there is some hilarious stuff.
Because I'm sure isn't there some dialogue between Jack and Miranda, and you basically just tell them to just go and shag each other.
Sex, yeah.
Just literally that's what it is. But the characters walk in and just go, will you please just go? And they're just bickering at the bar, aren't they? And then you've just got this massive house which you can decorate, and you can throw this huge party and all this kind of thing going on. And then at the end of it, you're stood on the you're in the
loading bay. Yeah.
And it's kind of just like, oh, we had the best time, didn't we? And you're like, it was a blast.
Yeah.
And then you get back
and that's the thing,
to the story. Yeah.
It's all past tense at that point because they've resigned themselves to the fact that they are
going
all doomed.
to die.
Yeah.
And then from that point, and I played that piece of content probably a few missions before the end. So where I played it in the story, when I got back to what I was doing before, which was by that point,
not
the
good.
end.
Not good. Yeah.
It was so poignant at that point.
It really is.
It was just
I always do it just before Chronos Station.
Yes, that's pretty much, I think, where I did it.
That's the point of no return.
Yeah, that's it. So I did it pretty much before the point of no return. And then to go from that to then go into that sequence of levels, which then culminates towards that ending. It was just, so playing it in the legend, I say actually it's probably my favorite experience of playing this trilogy has been the legendary one, because you had all of the content there in the box.
Yeah.
And you could play it where it was supposed to be played. But I suppose the only criticism I will say for that is I think with Mass Effect 3, it was probably easier than any of the other games to miss things, because they had certain things that were timed, unlike previous installments.
That's true. Yeah, because like the Grissom Academy thing, if you leave it, it's this idea that the Reapers are kind of encroaching into various corners of space.
Yeah, and you actually are dealing with threats in real time, so you have to make choices about what you do.
And if you get to a certain point in the story, then those pockets of space are then overrun by the Reapers, and you can't do that side content anymore.
Yeah, because I mean,
everyone's dead.
Because the Grissom Academy is Jack.
Yeah.
Jack has basically left the Cerberus. Her thing was, she basically went and became a teacher for gifted kids and gifted biotic kids. Because that again is a huge evolution of character for her. Because her loyalty mission in the second one is bleak.
Yeah,
she's basically a child who was experimented on, tested, and all sorts of horrible. She basically went through torture to try and enhance the biotic abilities as a child. She's unhinged, completely unhinged. But by the time you get to part 3. She's kind of grown as a character in that she's decided to put her energy into helping children who are like her.
I mean, she's just kind of made peace with her past, which is probably a lot to do with what you actually experience with her in the second game.
100%. I think that's exactly
what it is. She's drawn a line under it and is able to now move on.
But the idea is you can meet Jack and there's this entire evolution of character there. But if you don't do it in time, it's gone.
Yeah, because the Reapers turn up and kills
them all. It's just everything about the game is just, and it's not a criticism either. I think it's a really bold
very
move.
Effective.
It is a really effective.
It can be really tough to play at points, but it's so effective and you're so invested in what's happening.
Which is why I think I can understand in hindsight why people hate the ending so much. But I didn't.
No.
Because the first time I played it, I went all out on it. I went all the war assets.
Yeah.
I did all the characters surviving. So I picked Destroy because I don't think there is any other choice.
And that's the thing. This idea that people complain that the element of choice is taken away from you.
There is no choice.
There is no other choice for me. This whole trilogy of games has been about destroying the Reapers.
I don't think there should be a choice.
Why would you do anything else?
The choice is there for me because it's meta. Because the idea is if you choose the blue one, because this is the way they play it, it's quite clever. They use the color coding system, which is in the game. So Paragon is blue, which is good. Renegade is red, Renegade bad. Destroy is painted as the red Renegade option.
Yeah.
So some people will gravitate towards Paragon, which is to fuse with the Reapers and bring peace to the galaxy. You've been indoctrinated if you do that.
Exactly.
The Reapers are on their last chance saloon because they know, oh, fuck, someone made it to the Crucible.
They could push that button and kill us.
Yeah. So if we don't do something now, we're toast.
Yeah.
So I quite liked the idea that it's a faux choice.
Yeah.
There isn't a choice there and there shouldn't be one because really all anyone should do is to stumble with the last of their energy to that generator and start blasting.
Well, this is the thing. It doesn't matter what your shepherd is like in terms of personality, whether they're a bitch, whether they're a hero, this paragon of virtue that saves everyone and pets kittens and whatever. There is one singular goal.
One unifying goal across all versions of this game.
To beat the Reapers, to destroy the Reapers, to wipe them off the face of the galaxy. Why would you get to that end point and do anything else?
And since synthesis is also something you can unlock, isn't it? If you've got enough war assets. Which again doesn't make any sense. It's a faux choice. You've been indoctrinated. If you choose anything other than destroying the Reapers outright, the idea is that you've been indoctrinated. Yeah. You see the elusive man like 5 minutes before with this thing about how he can control the Reapers and bring peace to the galaxy. The guy is so far gone by that point. You see it.
Yeah.
He's turned into a borderline machine.
Yeah.
And that's the point. I don't know how you can look at that and then
think, oh, yeah, he's got a point.
But it's playing into the idea of hubris, isn't it? The idea that Shepard is so good and so strong that Shepard could circumvent this issue.
Yeah.
And it's just simply not true.
No.
That's what I mean. Everyone's saying, oh, there's no choices there. It's the illusion of choice because there is only one thing you should be doing there.
Yeah.
I know that the idea is that Edie's going to die
and the Geth and anyone synthetic basically is going to go.
It is the only choice.
Yeah.
That's what everything in the galaxy has been building up to at that point. Every species, every race, everything has been building up to that one moment.
And that's kind of harkens back to what we were saying earlier about how the ending isn't really the ending.
No, the whole game is the ending.
The ending, what people call the ending is just the culmination of the ending. It's
just the last bit of the game.
Yeah, it's just the last couple of minutes of the game. The whole game is the ending.
But it's significant to me because, like I said, if you've got enough war assets and you've done enough in there, you pick the destroy ending, and you get this small sequence of rubble, which you assume is in London or somewhere else, and it scans across a chest with a piece of N7 armor on it that suddenly goes to takes a breath.
Yeah, but it's also significant that you will only get that sequence if
you choose destroy. And if you do everything in the game as well, there is a certain obligation to get a certain amount of war assets, complete a certain amount of missions. So basically, if you get the best possible ending, the best possible preparation for the ending, and then you choose destroy, and you can only get it when you choose destroy.
Yeah,
Shepard's alive.
It's heavily implied.
Well, it's heavily because this happy ending mod in the PC version has modded in dialogue, hasn't it? Them looking for them.
More than that, it's fully decked out.
But I'm right in thinking they have put dialogue in there where they're looking for Shepard in the rubble, aren't they? You can hear the voices.
I don't, because I haven't played the new version.
Yeah, I'm sure I've seen a bit. Maybe it's not even a mod, because I've seen some. I haven't played the PC version at this point, but I've seen videos on YouTube, like long plays of cutscenes and stuff with the mods included, and I've watched a load of them, and there is one where they've included the voices of everyone going, "They're over here," or whatever, they're looking for you in the rubble. But there is another one as well, I think, where Shepard's present at the plate. That's basically that's my recollection of the mod that I played on the OG versions back in the day. Is that it's that scene where ordinarily it would be your love interest or someone else putting your name, putting the plate that says Shepard on it on the wall, but it's Shepard's there and it's one for Anderson. Yeah. To be honest, I never hated the idea of Shepard dying though. To me, it kind of fit. I like the idea, like with Destroy, if Shepard died destroying the Reapers, to me that would be okay. It's
a poetic kind of going out in a blaze.
It's sad and it's dark, but considering the last 60 hours of this playthrough, the writing's on the wall.
And it's also this idea that the Destroy ending is going to destroy synthetic beings, and obviously your Shepard is partially
synthetic.
Majority synthetic.
Yeah,
by that point,
that's the point, actually. Yeah, you're right.
So it would make sense.
I hadn't completely considered the implication of that. Yeah, you're right. But it is just it's such a journey from start to finish. Like in terms of just whether it's sort of by virtue of different writers or whatever, there is this kind of real evolution and wildly shifting tone and all through but I think it works. It can be a bit slapdash in places, but I think overall it really works. And I think people should give Mass Effect 3 another chance.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think
especially with this edition, if you're playing all three.
Yeah. And if you have access to the PC version, get on nexusmods.com and have a look and see what's on there. The Same Gender Romance is really well done. If you want to check out the Happy Ending mod, that's literally what it's called. Just search for that. It's just a very different way to kind of conclude everything. Yeah.
It's almost kind of there is an argument that it is, the ending is quite abrupt. So, I mean, it doesn't change much, but it just adds those little bits of window dressing. Yeah. Just, I mean, especially in this context when you've got 3 games in one, Mass Effect 3 deserves a revisit and it deserves another chance. It dropped the expectations that the years of hype have gone now. Yeah. So you're just looking at objectively for what it is as a game. It really stands up. Yeah. And I think it's a really close... I personally at this point can't completely decide which is my favourite anymore, 2 or 3. I'm leaning towards 2 just because of just how big, bombastic and the big space opera that it is. 2 was just such a moment,
wasn't it? It was just a very special thing because it did take this game that was kind of pretty average. Really, it was okay.
Mass
it was
Effect
good.
1 was a perfectly serviceable game. It's an RP. It was a pretty run of the mill space RPG.
And I think Mass Effect 2, though, and literally you put it on and you play it for 5 minutes, and you're like, okay, this is going somewhere now. It
reminds me a bit of Assassin's Creed, the original Assassin's Creed, where you can see the foundations were there for a very good game, but it doesn't quite pull it off. Yeah. Come Assassin's Creed 2, you're like, okay, now we're really into something. Now we've really hit the stride with it. Now we know what we want to do with it, and this is how we're gonna,
That's it.
Playing it with the Legendary Edition, and I can't wait to play it on PC with all those mods, but as it stands at the moment with what I've got access to, this is my favourite incarnation of the game in terms of playing it from start to finish with all the content in the box.
And I think that's the beauty of the fact that we had been kind of scarred by a couple of remaster jobs. There have also been some excellent ones like Crash and Spyro. Yeah. Those remasters were
proper ground up. Yeah.
If we want to talk about the gold standard of remasters, that's it for me. Whereas the gameplay
Crash is a banger.
Yeah. The gameplay is pretty much completely untouched. It's just been tarted up.
100%. Crash is a great example of that. I haven't played Spyro in full. I played the first one, but it's
the game itself is identical. Yeah. It's just a facelift.
It's just been improved in all the right ways.
But it's not just a facelift. It's not just an up-res. It's not just new textures. No. It's from the ground up.
It's a remake, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a remake of the original.
It just plays exactly the same as the original. Yeah. And that's perfection for me. Mass Effect had the capacity to go really badly wrong, and it didn't.
Yeah.
And we can only be grateful for that.
I mean, I think it's a bit... I feel like it's a real fluke because considering that EA were at the helm, but a part of me thinks that EA may have had a rare moment of self-awareness and that this is probably one of the last titles we've got that really does have a fan base.
And it's also our last chance.
It's not sport.
It's also our last chance to actually bring it back.
At the end of the day, they have to drum up trade for Mass Effect 4. We knew they were doing it by that point.
Yeah. If the Legendary Edition had come out and it had been flapsnot, then
I think it would have been dead in the water. I'd have probably still played it, but my hype wouldn't have been there.
I don't think it would have seen the light of day.
No, I think it would be shelved quietly.
If the Legendary Edition hadn't been so well received, because it was good.
Yeah.
The franchise was already on ice after Andromeda.
I was also really happy with the Legendary Edition in the sense that it actually brought a whole new generation of players to the franchise.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of younger people who'd never played the original ones who picked it up and fucking loved it.
Yeah.
Really loved it. There's a couple of people I work with who were in like 1920, which makes me feel physically sick because that's how old I was when I played it first.
Yes.
They'd never played it and then they picked it up. I think it was probably just in a sale or something.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things they kind of went into with no expectations and then they came back into work like after the weekend and went, fuck,
this is
really good. And I'm like, where are you? And I'm like, you have
no idea.
No idea. They're like halfway to 2/3 of the way through Mass Effect 1 and I'm like,
just buckle up, honey.
Just get back to me next week when you got onto it. And then literally they came in there with Mass Effect. They were like, Mass Effect 2 is really good. I'm like, yeah, it is.
Yes,
it is. But that's the thing. It's brought in a whole new generation of players. It's preserved these games in such a way that they will be readily available now.
Yes.
Forever, I think.
They're available on modern machines in a perfectly playable state. They look good.
All of the content is in the box.
Holds up.
Yeah.
All of the content's in the box.
Yeah. So really, unless you have access to the PC version, this is the definitive version of Mass Effect. I think it is.
And to be fair, I haven't actually played the modded version of the Legendary Edition. I can only assume based on my experience with the modded versions of the original version.
Well, it's just going to be the things that it's just going to be the mod improvements with an already perfected version of the game, which I think is
absolutely shook yesterday when I went back on Nexus Mods because I've just reinstalled it to play it. And I was sorting all the mods out. They have patched Pinnacle Station back into Mass Effect 1.
Shit.
Don't ask me how, because according to BioWare, it was gone.
My hat is off to modders. I just don't know how they do it. It is.
I honestly haven't got a clue how they've done it because BioWare said we've lost it. It's not there.
Well,
we haven't got the source files.
They've obviously just built it, which is even more impressive.
Maybe taken code from the original version, reverse engineered it.
Exactly. And
but then you think, why couldn't BioWare do that? It goes back to the same gender romances thing. Why couldn't they just do it?
This is the thing that blows my mind is they claim there's no room in the budget in it. And I know when you've got commercial employees, you've also got to pay for them. But I mean, when you're looking at what community modders are capable of, for fuck's sake.
Just do it.
Just do it. Do you know what I mean?
Or pay them to do it.
Exactly that. Like, why hasn't somebody approached these modders and just gone, do you know what?
I will give you so many hundreds of thousands of dollars for your mod.
Yeah.
And they would say, thank you very much.
Do you fancy working for us for secondment for 6 months? Or whatever, you know, this
is what grips my shit about mods in general, and Capcom are guilty of this.
Yes, they are very guilty. I know where you're going with this,
and they will shut that shit down because they'll be like, "This is something that we want to do.
Yeah,
we have to shut this down."
Well, this isn't related to Mass Effect, but this is what everyone's tentatively waiting for with regards to this fan-made Code Veronica remake. Because if Capcom shut down this Code Veronica remake, Code Veronica's in the pipes somewhere.
Exactly.
If they leave it alone, then it isn't happening.
Yeah.
But they did exactly the same thing to Resident Evil 2, which is now Daymare 1998. But they did a fan-made RE2 remake, which Capcom shut down without, and everyone was like, what are you doing that for? What, a couple of weeks later at E3, suddenly you got that trailer from Resident Evil 2 remake. Yeah. So yeah, if Capcom shut down the Code Veronica fan remake, then we know we're getting Code Veronica.
I just don't know why. I get why you want to shut it down because obviously it's in your kind of commercial interest to do so if it's something that you're planning on doing. But I don't understand why...
It's not community friendly.
It's not community friendly, and there's so much talent in the community. I don't understand why...
Just offer these people a job.
Exactly. It's like someone tried to remake PT, didn't they?
Yeah.
Because PT was kind of wiped off the face of the earth by Konami because of the whole Kojima fallout. And they shut it down.
I think that's just Konami being Konami, to be fair. At this point, I think they're just firebombing. They've just become a self-sabotaging
Let's not
firebombing.
get into that.
No, that's a whole other podcast in itself. But yeah, I mean, I can't... Is there anything else we haven't touched on with?
To be honest, I don't think this episode has actually had any focus to it at all. I think it's been a stream of consciousness. I think we've just been farting out anecdotes about Mass Effect.
I mean, this is the thing. I don't think any of our conversations about these games are strictly review, but it's more just it's
just chit-chat,
anecdotal, isn't it?
Yeah.
But then I suppose the beauty is with these games is they've been in the public spheres for so long. We don't have to tell people what they are. We don't have to. They're there. People have seen them. People know what they are. But Mass Effect Legendary Edition is something I think I could wholeheartedly recommend to absolutely everybody.
Yeah, whether you've played them before or not.
I can't think of anybody that wouldn't enjoy this game. No. I really can't. There's no kind of gamer that I can think of that wouldn't enjoy this game.
There's something for everyone.
There is something for everyone.
If you like a shooter, if you like an RPG, if you like your games really, really story driven.
Especially, I think, once you get to Mass Effect 2, if you're not so big on the heavy RPG elements like I'm not.
That is stripped out.
It really hits its stride in terms of, I mean, because when games tend to try to appeal to the wider base and do something for everybody, they tend to do something for nobody, and it's a failure.
Jack of all trades, master of none.
Mass Effect 2 is an exact opposite of that. I think it streamlines it enough to keep it engaging enough for RPG players, but also it strips out a lot of the stuff that is a bit overwhelming to people that aren't well versed in that kind of game. So even things like customizing weapons and stuff is better, I think, in Mass Effect 2 and 3. The character customization is something I still think could have been improved as well, if I'm honest, from the remaster.
Yeah.
I think they could have done more in terms of texture modding and making the characters look I'm talking about your customizable character. I think
I see what you mean. Yeah.
The female Shepard has always been a bit
potato facey.
Very. Yeah. I think they've done a better job with it because they've basically used Mass Effect 3's character customization.
I think that new default FemShep looks really weird.
I always make some tweaks. My FemShep is just kind of...
Yours looks like mine.
Mine is kind of Shepard. She's always a redhead, always has been. But then she always has been in the promo material as well. I noticed all that. It was.
But that came after.
Yes, it did, and that's what I mean.
We always had our. I mean, as I say, your FemShep looked pretty much exactly the same as mine.
Yeah.
And she always had red hair and kind of bold eye makeup.
Yes.
And then the promo material for Mass Effect 3 came out and everyone was like, red hair. And I was like, oh.
Okay, we tapped into something there.
Yeah.
It's, but yeah, I mean, the character customization, I've said that just in terms of my general, the few gripes I've got with it, I think that's something that probably could have benefited from it. It wasn't game breaking.
They suggested it was going to be more than it was.
Well, I think they did.
They put a couple of extra hairstyles.
I basically think they used Mass Effect 3's one, didn't they? Which was the better one for all three games. So they did improve that, but I think they could have done more.
Yeah, I agree.
There were elements of the remaster again that I think were quite basic. They could have done more, but for what we got, for the price and there is something
to be said for preservation, not changing too much. I would have liked them to have gone a bit further with it, but I can see why they didn't, and I can see why some people would have not been happy if they had.
No, 100%, and that's what I mean in terms of these are the things I'm griping about are things that would have been nice.
Yeah, nice to have.
They haven't taken away from anything.
Nice to have is not essential.
They would have been. I mean, the only thing I would probably say is that the relationship thing.
Should have been. It's because it would have been so easy for them to do because modders have already done it.
Because I heard people that have just said, "Well, Shepard's not gay, so he doesn't need." Well,
mine is,
and it's like, well, it doesn't matter. The point is that it was cut content, and it was cut arbitrarily because of the climate at the time of the release. We've moved on since then. You can comfortably restore this back to they do it with films all the time.
Yeah. And you can't say Shepard's not gay. Your Shepard's not gay.
This is what I mean.
My Shepard can be whoever they want to be, whether that's male, female, non-binary, gay, whatever.
I mean, mine was more just coming from the place that I personally just felt that the female characters stole the show in Mass Effect.
It was the voice acting. It's just because Jennifer Hale can do no wrong.
Jennifer Hale's brilliant. Courtney Taylor's great. Yvonne Strahovski's really good in it. The woman who plays Samara is fantastic. Samara's great. And also her daughter, what's the daughter's name? Morinth. She's fantastic.
That scene where Samara and Morinth have the fight in the apartment is one of my favourite moments across the whole trilogy.
To end on, to be fair, that's a good one.
That camera where it spins around and they're just in the middle, like just firing
holding each other. And basically you have this choice where you save Morinth, who is the renegade choice, or you can save Samara, who is the what do they call them at Justicars?
Yes.
So it's like this paragon of moral virtue for these
Although that's a grey area.
Well,
really, isn't it?
I think it's more their uncorrupted justice, as in there is a right and wrong binary which is not affected by feeling. It's very much head over heart kind of.
Yeah.
This person has done wrong, they're a danger to society, we kill them.
So we kill them.
Most people would say, well, killing them's wrong, but we're taking a piece off the chessboard, that is dangerous, we're getting rid of it.
Yeah.
It's just this completely unfeeling, quite mechanical version of justice. And I don't hate it.
No.
I don't hate it. Oh, see, we could go on for another
hour. I know.
We haven't even touched on, let's just end it. We might as well. Favourite characters from across the franchise.
Oh,
it was a good one to end on.
You've done it now.
Female Shepard would be my start.
Oh, well, yeah, we can't count Shepherd because your
Oh, I don't know.
Shepherd
I
can be
think you
whoever
can.
you want it to be. Your Shepherd is dear to you as my Shepherd is dear to me, and
Agreed.
everyone else's Shepherd will be dear to them. I think that's a cop out choice.
It's not my favourite, but I think it's a mention.
Yeah,
I think
the fact that you can play someone that you can
you
completely
really like.
mold.
Yeah, and the fact that you end up really liking. Yeah.
Yeah. I think favourite characters: Rex, Morden.
Morden Solus.
Morden
How did we get
Solus.
this whole podcast without mentioning
Without
Morden?
mentioning Morden.
Morden Solus's ending is still one of the most
I
heartbreaking things I've ever
know.
seen.
Oh, stop it. Jack
Jack.
and Thane.
Thane's definitely, but for me it would be Jack. 100%. I really like Miranda. I really find that character
like
goes
Miranda.
through an interesting arc. It basically starts off as corporate bitch,
Yes.
and
Which is still fabulous.
yeah, and that's the thing, because she is, for all intents and purposes, a clone, isn't she? And then it's kind of, again, it's almost like Jack in this character that comes from, because they are comparable in that way.
They are. They actually have a lot in common, and that's why they clash.
They come from very, very difficult backgrounds for different reasons, but then they both end up becoming their own people.
Yeah.
And they both end up becoming fully fledged people with their own beliefs and goals and all this kind of a thing. Thane is an obvious one. I love Thane. I think his whole story.
Just a very understated character for me.
It's a whole redemption arc, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's an assassin.
I love that whole, because he's an assassin by trade, and this whole idea that he's not entirely at peace with that.
No.
And it's kind of a journey that he's on about making peace with effectively being a bad person and ending lives for money or for whatever.
I feel like we could have easily done about 2 or 3 episodes on
I
that
know,
there, because
I
there's so
know.
much to talk about.
But I also feel like I will have a job in the editing room.
Yeah. If we ever revisit this topic, I think we need to make some bullet
We need
points
to make
on
some
paper.
notes, yeah,
And,
because we've literally just been dancing around from point to point in seemingly random fashion.
there's a metaverse of conversation involved with Mass Effect,
Absolutely.
depending on where you start.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of my favorite games of all time again. And I probably one of the contenders for the games of last year in terms of just how much time I got out of it and just what a treat it was to go back.
Yeah.
And play these games in this form. It was it was a real joy from start to finish.
And whether you've played them before or not, the Legendary Edition, can't recommend it enough, really. They did a really good job without changing much, admittedly.
Yeah.
But they did a good job of preserving them and bringing them relatively up to date.
I would caveat with anyone who's playing it or played it and is struggling with the first one is to persevere. I was exactly the same when I played it. You're in a better position than I was in that Mass Effect 1's been restored significantly.
Yes.
But I think if you're struggling with the first one, by the time you get to 2, you are in for a...
Anyone I've recommended the series to, Craig being one of those people...
Start with 2.
No, I said start with 1.
Okay.
But stick with it.
Stick with it and
because
persevere.
you'll think, I'm not too sure about this. It's not that good. And that's exactly what happened. And to be fair, he took to it and he was like, I'm really enjoying this.
I think by the time you get to Vermeer, that's when it starts to really go.
He was like, I'm really enjoying it. And I was like, okay, well, I'm pleasantly surprised by that, but just wait.
And then by the time you get on to 2 and 3, you are in for a
that first 5 minutes of 2, he was like, holy shit, I see exactly what you mean.
Yes.
Of the jumping quality. And he was already hooked.
Yeah.
So, but he's a big sci-fi fan. So, yeah.
So, I suppose we'll wrap it up there.
I think we better because otherwise we'll be here literally all evening.
All evening.
And I've already got at least half of this I need to cut out.
Excellent stuff. Well, thank you again for joining us on this one. Our next episode, then we may as well just go ahead and say, is going to be about...
Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker.
Yeah, well, whole of Final Fantasy XIV, I suppose. But
which would have been my personal choice, but plot twist... This one started playing it.
And I don't like Final Fantasy.
And she doesn't like Final Fantasy.
And I've never played an MMO before. So
Endwalker is one of my games of the year, but it's also going to be a very interesting topic of discussion for us. As you say, me being basically a veteran and you being a sprout.
Complete sprout. I don't think I'm ever going to shake that, to be honest. There's still so much of it. I'm delighted there's an in-chat feature of that because I'll be like, what the fuck is this? How does this work? So there's always a tome of people to draw from, but that will be our next one, and that'll be an interesting conversation.
that'll be an interesting conversation just because of the incredible. We usually talk about these things as kind of being very much on the same page with them,
and also being at a comparable experience level. And this is going to be an interesting one. I think that one.
Yes, looking forward to it.
Indeed. Well, thank you very much again.
Thanks
for
listening,
us.
and we will see you in a couple of weeks.
Indeed. Thank you.
Ta-ra.